Is it true if your child is obsessed with a food that you should serve it more often?
Yes, it is. But I had a friend whose daughter was 3 and had ice blocks for the first time and was waking up at 3 a.m. screaming for ice blocks. And she was like, what am I going to do? And I said, well, next snack time, bring out the whole packet. It's not your job to get your child to eat. And I think if parents sit with that, they go, well, what the heck am I supposed to do? How am I meant to make sure they have a healthy diet?
Hey, welcome to Parents We've Met. I am Dayna. Jenny, we are your hosts, and we are in season 3. And Jenny, as I was driving here this morning, I thought about 3 seasons and what I've been taking out of it. And I think that I've been kinder to myself, like having sleep psychologists and sports psychologists and different people share their stories. And also, I reckon in my parenting journey, I am lowering my expectations, which I think is such a good thing. So if you are joining us for the first time, if you have been listening for all 3 seasons, I really hope that it's not been information overload, but that you have just been kinder to yourself and lowering your expectations and feeling encouraged that other people, they have a lot of magic in parenting, but there is a lot of mess and hard stuff too. So that's my little disclaimer at the start. I really hope that you're getting some good stuff out of hanging out with us. And today you are in for a treat because we are talking a subject that I think has brought a lot of frustration and battles in my home. And probably I have needed to lower my expectations and be kinder to myself in this particular area. So we are talking food, kids and food, body image, just trying to find more calm at mealtime. So I'm very excited to learn for myself and to share some tips with you guys. Rachael Wilson, thank you so much for saying yes and coming to hang out and hopefully bring some more kindness to ourselves and help lower expectations around meal times. Because I think in parenting, as caregivers, we can be really hard on ourselves in this area.
Oh, we can be so hard, and it is really lovely to have you here, Rachael. Thank you. Did you want me to introduce myself?
Do you want to?
Shall I?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
I just feel like everyone knows
season.
Jenny by now.
Yeah. If you're just listening for the first time, I'm a mum, I'm a grandma. I've got four grandchildren now from 15. We've got a 15-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So I think it keeps me in the game.
Yeah.
You know, I look after them a bit and think, this parenting thing, you're so right. It's hard work. It's challenging. Sometimes you can be really hard on yourself. And I love your call out to let's be a little bit more compassionate and gentle with ourselves and drop some of those high expectations.
I'm a mum too, by the way, in case you didn't know. I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. Rachael, do you want to do the rounds and introduce us to your whānau as well?
Kia ora, everybody, and thanks so much for having me on. I'm from Ireland originally, and I have got 2 girls. I've got a 12-year-old, nearly 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and there's 15 months between them, so it was a ride when they were little.
Now, we're all parents here, parents we've met, but Jenny, do you want to give us a bit more background about what Rachael does in her studies? And
First of all, I've got to say, Rachael, I love your accent, and if I start speaking with a little lilt, it's just because I'm embracing it. Yeah, I love it. You're one of New Zealand's leading child nutrition experts and co-founder of the Food Tree, and you're a UK-trained registered dietitian, and you specialise in family feeding disorders, and disordered eating and body image, and have a whole lot more training and hats that you wear. What got you into this field of work and has kept you passionate about it for so long?
Oh, wow. Big question.
Familiar.
I suppose I was very much influenced by both my parents. My dad's a doctor, so I quite like the science and medical side of things. But then my mum's a therapist. So my mum's a psychotherapist that specialises in working with children. So the therapeutic side of things really appealed to me. And when I was a student, we do a gap year in Ireland. So I did a gap year and I did some work in a children's hospital as a dietitian, working with dietitians, and loved it. So that's what kind of started me on this career 23 years ago. So I've been a dietitian 23 years. So yeah. And I suppose as I've grown, I've specialised in different areas and trained and continued to train throughout my career. So it's really kept things alive. Yeah.
Yeah. Normally when we have an expert in the chair, we like to do a bit of a quick fire to get us going. And so I found it really hard to not put 40 questions in a quick fire, which makes it not a quick fire. But there's so many things that I would like to cover. So let's just get into it. And it can give everyone listening, watching a bit of an idea of some of the things we'll be talking about. So here we go. Do my kids have to finish their dinner before dessert?
No. That's the quick answer. What happens is, on a neuroscience perspective, if you are trying to tell your children that they will get the dessert if they finish their dinner, you're reinforcing the fact that dinner is not very nice and you're putting the dessert on a higher pedestal. So what I actually recommend is a couple of times a week serving dessert along with your dinner, even at the same time. And what that does is it takes that kind of that food, that dessert off the pedestal, and it lets food be food. And what you find, people go, oh, but if I do that, then they're not going to eat their dinner. But actually what you notice is that they take a bite of lasagna, a little bit of a cookie, a bite of lasagna, a little bit, and they finish when they've had enough. What happens is, if we say you get dessert after your dinner, they end up maybe not eating more than their dinner than they feel like they might want, because they just want it finished to get the dessert. And then they end up overeating or eating what I call an excessive fullness. So they eat more than what they needed.
I love that.
I
Two
know.
bowls together. So
Yeah. With dinner, I'd recommend like a child-sized portion, not as much ice cream as you want at dinner.
Okay.
We want the dinner still to kind of take priority, but yeah.
I can imagine my husband bringing out the whole container with the spoon. Should we celebrate kids eating all their dinner or just play it cool?
I just play it cool. I think, again, we want children to trust their body's intuition, and they know how much they feel like eating. And we don't want it to be pressure-based either. If you're celebrating, it can be felt as pressure.
What about if they tried a vegetable that they've not tried before? Would you go, good job, or just play it cool?
I would play it cool.
Okay,
For some children, the praise works and it encourages them. But some children, particularly if you've had a selective eater or a fussy eater or an anxious eater, if you praise them, they're then going to, the next time that food's out, they'll be like, oh, they're going to want me to eat it again. And the anxiety builds up. And when somebody's anxious about eating, it switches off their hunger and they're not interested in eating.
So good. School lunch boxes come back half eaten. We've all been there. What should we do?
That's a really tough one. And it depends on what's going on for the child. Like, a lot of children I work with are neurodivergent, and school is just very dysregulating. It can be really, really hard being in school. So oftentimes I'll say to parents, put a bigger breakfast before they start so that they've got something solid going in. Children don't have to eat their lunch. So it could be that you have a bigger snack when they come back. But the other thing is packing stuff that you know they're going to eat more easily at school. And for some kids, that may be something that's a little more high sugar or high fat to give them energy to get them through the day. Or it could be something liquid like an Up and Go or something like that to give them just that boost to get them through. And I think a lot of people go, oh, but that's not healthy. And generally, I prefer that a child is fed and has something to keep them going throughout the day, rather than relying on what's the best food to have.
We're going to talk more about lunchboxes later, because there's so much that's come up with questions. But beige food phase, ride it out or intervene?
Generally, I would say to intervene earlier, because there could be things that without realizing you're doing that might actually be making things worse or making it harder. And oftentimes I see parents where they go, oh, we'll just wait. And then the issues become more and more ingrained, particularly depending on the child's stage of development. Like, if they're getting closer to 6 or 7, they're getting into that concrete operational stage of development, and their beliefs around food are getting more kind of strong and fixed. So really, if we can intervene earlier, there could be stuff that we can do that can shift things quicker, rather than kind of waiting it out and it gets more ingrained.
I know this is quick fire, but I feel like people will be listening going, what does intervening look like? So if you've got beige, you've got your chicken nuggets and your potatoes and stuff, how would you start intervening?
I'd look at, there's a couple of things. So really looking at removing pressure. And that can be any type of pressure, even saying kind of, oh, you should try it, you might like it, or the sales pitch of like, oh, it'll help you grow big and strong, or kind of carrots help you see in the dark, that kind of thing. For some children, that can make them more anxious about eating. So really removing any kind of pressure around food.
I was thinking I need to tape my mouth, some of those things, but then I'm having dinner too, so it won't work. But we all say it.
Yeah. And it makes sense. Like, we're so ingrained. We're products of how we were raised. And I definitely grew up in a clean plate house. Like, you had to finish everything on your plate. And there was a study in the US that showed that they looked at university students, and 70% reported that they were pressured into eating a food when they were younger, and they don't eat that food anymore.
Brussels sprouts to me. Is hiding vegetables in food ever a good idea?
It depends on the age of the child. Like if it's a younger child and they're not aware. But the problem is if children then are aware that you're hiding veggies, it will lose their trust in you. So I think it's really important to talk to kids like we put some of this in your sauce and this is going to be blended in, and letting them know that it's going to be in the sauce. And ultimately we want kids who are going to eat veggies when they go off to university. Like you're not going to be going to uni with them hiding like Brussels sprouts in their bolognese or something like that. So we want them to be able to eat those.
Finish the sentence. Mealtime should be
a time for connection and coming together as a family. And I think if you reframe what success looks like at mealtimes, that can be really helpful, instead of kind of, did everybody finish everything on their plate? If it's, did everybody feel calm and relaxed at the table? Was there, for everybody, was there something that they felt that they could get enough of, that they were able to feel full when they left the table? That can really make a difference.
Easter is coming up. Let them go crazy or limit number of chocolates?
What happens is when we limit things and when we restrict them, children want them more. So I think we need to have a structure around those foods. So things like Christmas, Halloween, Easter. On the day, let children have as much as they want. And let them eat as much of their eggs as they'd like to have, and have other foods available. And then the next few days have those foods, but have them at a snack time. So they can have as much as they want at snack time with some milk or some carrots or some hummus. And then it doesn't interfere with their main meal.
Yeah.
The other thing to be really conscious of is how we talk about those foods, because we don't want to be labeling them as unhealthy or bad, or creating that negative relationship with food around those things. Because then what happens is when we eat them, we feel shame and guilt and we shouldn't eat this. And it leads us to then actually eat more when we do get access to it, or to feel shame and guilt around eating them.
Jenny, do you want to take over the rest of them? Because I feel like you're hearing a lot of me, and
Oh,
this is not as
me
quick
too.
fire. We're just in the chat now, really.
What do you say to a kid who declares, I hate vegetables?
What I would say is that we don't talk about food like that in this house. It's really important that children have what we call a growth mindset around food. So I would just say, we don't talk about food like that. It's just something you don't eat yet, or you're still learning to like it. And there's a big difference, again, from a neuroscience perspective. If you think, I hate that, it's disgusting, I don't eat it, is a very closed mindset. And there's no room for the future. Whereas if we say, I'm still learning to like Brussels sprouts or peanut butter or something.
I'm still learning.
And I'll say to my kids, I'll share my own journey. Like I used to hate peanut butter. And I've only started enjoying peanut butter as an adult. It's taken me 30 years, 40 years to learn how to like peanut butter. But now I quite enjoy it.
Modelling it. Cool.
I love it. Is it true if your child is obsessed with a food that you should serve it more often?
Yes, it is. A really interesting anecdote. I had a friend whose daughter was 3 and had ice blocks for the first time, and was waking up at 3 a.m. screaming for ice blocks. And she was like, what am I going to do? And I said, well, next snack time, bring out the whole packet. And the first time she did it, she ate 5 and had brain freeze. And slowly as the weeks went on, it just became less and less. And she learned that the ice blocks weren't going anywhere. It wasn't something that she had to kind of wait out for. And yeah.
So much of this is counterintuitive. It really is going against what we have been deeply ingrained.
Really is. And it makes sense why it's really hard for parents. And I think that's one of the things, whenever I start doing a workshop, I always start with that Maya Angelou quote that we do the best we can with the information we have at the time. And then when we learn something different, we do different, because we're all products of how we raised. And I think parents can do things without realizing, because it's just what's intuitive to do around food.
So true. What's one thing social media gets wrong about kids and food?
Most of it. There was a research study about just nutrition information in general, and it said that 85% of nutrition information online is false, which is pretty scary. So I think even if you're looking at somebody who's a doctor, they're not necessarily evidence-based. So I would look at somebody who's a registered dietitian or a registered nutritionist to get information from online. And also being really mindful of those kind of quick fix stories or kind of sensationalist stories.
When you hear nothing tastes as good as skinny feels, what's your response?
It makes me really sad. I think we live in a world that's completely surrounded by diet culture. And I know that phrase came from like the 90s, and people say that's why we're as 90s, kind of born in the 90s, or kind of we're surrounded by that. But I think it's actually worse today for our children because they don't see images of real bodies. Everything's photoshopped, everything's edited. I think it's really hard to grow up with a strong sense of kind of feeling confident in your body because of the world that we live in.
Yeah. Good old 90s.
Kid doesn't finish dinner but says they're still hungry.
This is where one of the things I talk about with parents is having a structure and a framework, but freedom within that. So as parents, we decide what goes on the table, when meal times are and where they are. And if a child's, we need to make sure there's enough for them to be able to feel full after dinner, but then have that structure that if they haven't eaten enough at dinner, it's a learning experience and there's nothing else to have afterwards. But we might have a supper before bed. And supper is meant to be something that's filling but not thrilling. So not ice cream before bed because you didn't eat your dinner. So it's looking at, making sure they've had enough chance to eat, but they know that this is the way things are in our house. You don't have anything else after you've eaten.
Filling but not thrilling. That's going to
Good,
stick. It's really good. One last thing. One sentence every parent should remember when it comes to feeding kids.
This, again, is another controversial one. It's not your job to get your child to eat. And I think if parents sit with that, they go, well, what the heck am I supposed to do? How am I meant to make sure they have a healthy diet? And the main thing is through role modeling, through exposure. But actually, your job is to provide the food. After that, it's up to the child to decide how much they want to eat and whether or not they even want to eat what you've put on the table. And we need to sit with that. And that can be really, really uncomfortable, particularly if you've got a child who's losing weight, who's not eating much.
I can imagine too, growing up where we didn't have a lot, and then this idea of, but I've put it out there and that's all you want. I mean, there's so many things that you have to sit with and then reflect on your own upbringing and what you've experienced. But everything you've said, I mean, I feel like that's the slowest quickfire we've ever done.
Sorry, I'm not very good at giving slow answers.
But so much good stuff. And it's so different. Like, so true, Jenny, what you said. It's counterintuitive. But everything you said to me made sense.
Yeah.
I go, and take some of the pressure off. Because I think quite often it's, like you are looking at what they're having for dinner. I do remember reading something I think you put in an interview a few years back, and it said about how not to look at one meal, but the whole week.
Exactly.
And that in itself was a big change for me of kind of going, okay, I'm not going to stress about this meal. I know that, breakfast wasn't great, but I know that, dinner yesterday was really good. So I think that took off some of the pressure. Yeah, for
and
sure.
I think the other thing with that is that it's really natural for children's intakes to vary across the day. Like there was a study that showed that I think it was 5 and 6 year olds, their intake could vary between 400 to 4,000 calories a day. So there's some times where they're not hungry and they're not interested in food. And then there's other times where they're like a bottomless pit and constantly wanting snacks.
Yeah.
And that's normal. But I think so many of us, because we were raised in that clean plate house, we had to finish everything on our plate. And we learnt to kind of eat more than what we wanted all the time. Like I still find it hard to kind of, if I'm full, kind of not just have the last few mouthfuls on the plate kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So true.
Oh, so many gems there, Rachel. That's awesome. And I think I can feel the tension coming off parents already because it's such a big area that we struggle with. And I know it's deeply ingrained in our emotions and how we were raised. How were you raised around food, and what's the story behind how you got into the food industry? How did you, where did it all come from?
I had quite a good relationship with food growing up. Like my mum spent a bit of time in France when she was younger, so there was always kind of like a French influence on the food. We always had salads at dinner and stuff like that. I think there was an element of diet culture, like both my parents throughout the years had dieted over the years. And I remember starting my own first diet when I was 13. And over the years, tried all sorts of different diets. It was really interesting. A few weeks ago, my 12-year-old tried on my wedding dress and she fit it. And I remember I did a really, really strict diet to try and lose weight in order to fit into my wedding dress. And even on my wedding day, I didn't feel like I liked my body. So I think that spurred me to really look at the body image side of things. And I don't want my children growing up not liking their bodies and not feeling comfortable in their bodies. I think we're in a world that's so steeped in diet culture.
Yeah.
It's not enough just to be kind about our to kind of not talk negatively about our bodies. We need to actively talk positively about our bodies in front of our kids, even if we don't believe it. We need to work at it.
Yeah. You've talked about how it's not our role to make our kids eat. You know, we're providing the food. What is our role? So we're providing it. What else would sit with us that we can kind of go, okay, I can do this part?
I think there's a couple of different things. I think family meals are really, really helpful. Children learn to eat from seeing us eating. So if they don't see us eating, then they're not learning, and we're not role modeling eating a wide range of foods in front of them. And I know for a lot of families, we're not in the stage where kind of parents stay at home. A lot of the times both parents are working, they're busy. So it's trying to find a meal schedule that works for your family. And it might be family meals at the weekend or family meals for breakfast. So it's trying to work that. The other thing is being really mindful around pressure. And biting our tongue sometimes when we feel like we want to try and get our kids to try something or to eat something. Role modeling and being mindful how we talk about food and bodies in front of our kids.
Yeah. We've actually just done a one of those sort of, the food comes, you know, and you've got the kits, and we just did that as a way of us all experimenting together. And at the end, we would kind of give it a bit of a rating, but because it wasn't like a meal that I'd created or it felt safe to do that, so the kids are like, all right, I give it a 3.5, or that was a 7, and that's been quite good. It actually, even for me, because I get kind of same old, but yeah, it's not the cheapest thing, so I wait till there's a really good, 60% off, and then we'll give it a go. But yeah, that's been fun.
I think it's a really great idea to get kids used to helping in the kitchen as well, and those routines and rituals around meal times and learning how to cook.
Yeah.
You work with families with little ones all the way through to teens and helping parents and caregivers themselves, taking us up to the beginning. How do we start solids in a way that protects our kids' relationship with food?
This is one I get a lot because I think there's that whole baby-led weaning versus spoon feeding kind of thing. And I think both can be done in a responsive way. And that's what I specialise in, working with responsive feeding. So it's following your child's cues. So one of the things with starting solids is making sure they're developmentally ready. So some children, like even if I look at my own 2 children, they were very different in how they started solids. My older daughter was ready at 6 months, took off, and there was no stopping her. And by 8 months, she was like eating full chicken drumsticks. Whereas my younger daughter was a lot slower. We tried to start at 6 months. She was gagging. She wasn't ready. We came back again 6.5, but it was 7 months probably by the time she got into it. But what we want to do in terms of the idea of baby-led weaning versus spoon feeding is, I think we should be looking at both, but doing it in a way that's following our child's cues. So waiting to see what are the signs that they're telling us that they're hungry? What are the signs that they're telling us that they're not interested in eating and that they've had enough? And working with that. And also looking at, are they ready for finger foods? Like, are they able to pick things up properly and actually get them to their mouth? Studies show that only maybe 50% of 6 months olds are actually have that skill in terms of their fine motor skills to put food to their mouth. So baby-led weaning is not going to be particularly helpful for that age. They might need more spoon feeds. But then as they grow up, they're able to get the skills to work with it.
So when you talk about kids self-regulating their food, it's about that whole thing of what you said about knowing that they're full and sort of being in tune with their body? Yeah.
So generally children are born with that ability to self-regulate. They know when they've had enough. They know when they need more. And what happens is that sometimes some things can go wrong with that. And that's when that regulation gets broken if something gets in the way. And that could be pressure. It could be, there's a lot of children I work with that maybe had lots of upper airway stuff like ear infections and throat infections. They learned that eating hurts, it's sore to swallow. I've had children where they've had an allergic reaction and that's put them off eating and they're afraid to eat as a result of that. Or the other side of things can be if parents are restricting kids. So I've had parents where they've said, oh, they're eating too much and it seems like they've got no off switch and they're always always hungry. But what happens when we restrict those children is they actually don't trust that they're going to get enough to satisfy their bodies, and they end up eating more. Or the other thing that can happen is that they eat in secret. So it can become this cycle that develops a disordered relationship with food.
So what's the difference then if we think of selective eating and then restrictive eating?
They're both kind of quite similar. I use the terms kind of interchangeably. I also work with children with something called ARFID, A-R-F-I-D, which is a diagnosed feeding disorder. And that's quite different. I think some people, where they've had a diagnosis of ARFID, they're told, oh, it's just fussy eating, or they'll grow out of it. But it's not. It's a phobia of trying new foods, and it requires quite a different approach. Versus someone who's just a little bit selective or a little bit fussy around food. And ultimately, we want to look at children if they're eating less than 20 foods. It's a cause for concern, and we might want to intervene. Or if mealtimes are extremely stressful, or they're gagging or choking or vomiting around meals. So those are the kind of red flags that we're looking for, or if they're missing out whole food groups. Generally, I'm not worried if a child is eating fruit or veggies, but if they're not eating both, then that might be a concern in terms of their nutrients, or if they're not eating any meat or any protein foods. So it's, just being conscious of that it might be a bigger issue going on.
Yeah. So if, because I think ARFIDs, I'm hearing more about that. And when I mentioned to a few people that you're coming on, they're like, oh, I want to know more about this. I mean, is this something that if they feel that their child's in that category, they need to come and like see yourself, or what can they be doing at home, maybe while they wait to come and see you, to be helping in those areas?
Yeah, I work a lot with those clients in clinic. And I think probably the key things are the same that we work with selective eaters, but it's even more important, like removing pressure, allowing children to have a sense of autonomy around food. So that looks like letting them put their own food on their plate. Sometimes for children, if they're very anxious about food, simply putting it on their plate can increase their cortisol and then their adrenaline around food. And they become very stressed around eating. When I'm talking to kids, I talk about the idea of it's kind of like a tiger has jumped into the room and your body is responding in that way. So it's sending all your blood to your arms and your legs so you can either fight the tiger or run away. But what happens is it switches off your hunger. Like you can't, if you're running away from a tiger, you can't say, hold on, Mr. Tiger, can we stop and have a snack? Because I'm a bit hungry. So our bodies are in survival mode. It's switched off our hunger and we're not interested in food. So that's where the whole kind of, oh, they'll eat if they're hungry, or that it doesn't happen because they're just extremely anxious and nervous around food.
I can imagine how important it is for a parent to actually have someone like yourself kind of guiding them through, because on your own, I think we default so easily to what's worked or what we think will help. You almost need a voice, don't you, and a script and you pause here and because it is so different to how we want to do it.
And I think for a lot of those children, there's quite a lot of trauma around food. There may have been pressurized eating environments, or force feeding, or grandparents meaning well but commenting. And it just becomes this big thing all the time, that they have this belief about themselves and they internalize that pressure on themselves as well as children. They don't want their eating to be like that. They want to be able to eat sushi with their friends, or pizza at a birthday party, or the cake. So it can be really tricky, and it can take quite a while to unravel. And the other thing that I do is I work with children around how they manage that anxiety. So I've got a background in mindfulness and mindfulness for working with children. So we do some exercises around how can we regulate ourselves before we come to the table? How can we practice that so that we can help reduce that anxiety around food? But yeah, and it can be really hard for parents because they're anxious too. Particularly if you've got a child who's not eating veggies, or not eating enough meat, or their iron's low, or they're losing weight. It can be quite stressful. So it makes sense why that kind of intuition is to kind of keep pushing more because you're so worried about them. It's hard.
Even when you said about like putting something on a plate, and that, because I think it was 2 days ago with doing lunchboxes, and my kids are very different. Like one lunchbox comes and it's like request for more food next day, you know, and the other one it's like hardly touched. And when I was putting the lunchbox together, I put something in, and my daughter was like, I don't want that in there. And I was just wanting to get things in there. And I said, listen, if it comes back, it's fine. But she really didn't want it in there. And I should have just not put it in there. But I'm like, we just just going to leave it there. We're
Just
going to
in
move on,
case.
like maybe.
It's hard.
But it's good because now I'm going, okay, I'm going to actually listen to her. I'm going to get her more involved. I kind of almost feel like if the kids are in another room, it's like less pressure.
And it depends on what age they are as well, when they can start taking on some of those roles. Like my 10-year-old has been packing her own lunch for a year or so, maybe 2 years. And we have guidelines, like she needs to make sure she has a protein food that's going to help fill her up. She needs like some vegetables, some fruit, something snacky, something that's going to give her some energy. And she knows that as she goes through. But some of the stuff she puts in her lunch, I'm so, like her vegetables, sometimes she'll put a bit of parsley or some kale or coriander, or like she loves fennel and she'll have like a couple of slices. But
Gorgeous.
she eats it, so it's fair enough.
That's really good, having some guidelines, you know, of, okay, well, here's a little tick thing, but you get to choose and have a bit more autonomy over it.
And I think children will make mistakes, and we need to let them, because that's where they learn as well. Like there's times where she's not packed enough and she's come home and she's starving. And I say, oh, well, what could you do differently next time? What didn't work with that lunch that you might want to do differently?
Yeah.
Or the same with things like parties or eating too much. We need to let children have those learning experiences. A friend of mine, she's got 4 kids, and she was at this birthday party and she saw her youngest, who was about 4, going for the fizzy and the cakes. And she was just kept going back to the table, cup after cup of fizzy. And she was like, oh, she's going to be sick. What am I going to do? But she'd seen me do a couple of workshops and she said, Rachel would tell me not to intervene. I'm just going to leave her. And she did. But like 10 minutes after she was really close to stopping her, her daughter came up and did a big burp and said, I feel really sick. I think it was the fizzy. But if the mum had intervened, she wouldn't have had that experience to know, actually, if I drink 5 cups of fizzy, it's going to make me feel sick.
Yeah.
It's such a lovely way of giving children agency and kind of keeping their dignity as well, letting kids learn from the feedback that their body gives them.
Yeah.
Love it. You've got a template on your website that parents can use to send to their child's teacher around lunch boxes and eating. Can you explain about this letter and how it came about?
It was actually born out of my own daughter's experiences when she started school. And like we've always raised them with the division of responsibility, which comes from Ellen Satter, she's done probably one of the most research in the world around feeding relationships. She's a dietitian and family therapist in the US, but I was lucky enough to train with her and to be mentored by her. But she came up with this idea of you are responsible for the what, the when, and the where of feeding. And then after that, children are responsible for how much and if they want to eat. But when she started school, she wasn't allowed play till she'd finished everything in her lunchbox, or till she'd eaten a certain food, and there were rules around you couldn't eat your biscuit or your muffin until you'd had your sandwich or things like that. So it was something to help her, because the other thing that we noticed that other children in the class were hiding foods because they didn't want to be pushed to eat them, or parents were having to pack extra lunch boxes for those days where children might be a little bit more hungry that the teachers didn't know about, so that kids could have extra food if they wanted it. And I know that teachers were really well-meaning. They have healthy eating policies in schools and they really want children to eat well and be healthy. But actually what happens is children are learning to override their hunger and fullness, and to eat foods that maybe they're not in the mood for, they're not feeling like. And really, when we look at a healthy relationship with food, all foods can have a place in a healthy diet. And we want children who learn how to trust their bodies around food and how to learn what that feels like in their bodies around food. I think as adults, so many of us have lost that.
Thinking about all the different meal times, I reckon dinner is probably something that is the most stressful, you know, out of all of them. So have you got some ideas how we can bring more calm and connection back into dinner times in general?
It's a really hard time of the day. And I think so many parents say it's like their most stressful time of the day. I think getting away from the idea that it has to be perfect. I think looking at, like, there's sometimes in our house where we're really busy and mealtime can be some crackers and cheese and fruit and veggies and a snacky sort of a dinner, or we might have sandwiches, or like, it doesn't need to be this elaborate home cooked meal. It's working with what works for your family at that time. Sometimes it might be helpful to kind of pre-cook stuff. We've started doing a lot of going and buying some bulk food and cooking up and putting it in the freezer, and kind of having meals on hand for when those times when we're quite busy, we can just defrost something quickly. I think getting away from the idea that children need to finish everything on their plate as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, we had a episode with Petra Baggis, and she was saying like it's so lovely being all together, but her kids sometimes need to like lie on the beanbag, and just actually being a little bit more like, no, we all have to stay at the table.
Exactly.
Kind of just, you know, embracing what works within your family too. Eh?
We want to talk about, and you've already mentioned it, Rachel, about modelling, you know, and we're modelling when we're using our phones, you know, when we're distracted, when we're present with our kids. Is there anything else you'd like to add about how we should be modelling in front of our kids around food?
Yeah. I think trying to eat a wider range of foods in front of children and seeing you doing that. I think being really conscious of our language around food, that we don't call foods healthy or unhealthy or good foods or bad foods. Children, particularly younger children, they don't have the cognitive ability to understand that. So really the best way to help them become healthy eaters is to expose them to lots of different types of foods and role model eating them ourselves. And I think the other thing to be really conscious of is how we talk about bodies in front of our children. I did such a job of talking positively about my body in front of my kids that, you know, when they do in early childhood, the parents will, the teachers will help fill in like a Valentine's card for your kids. And one year mine came back and it was like, I love my mummy because she's got a fat, wobbly tummy and it's really good for giving hugs. And she's got a lovely fat bum that's nice to sit on. So I talk so much about my tummy. I said, yeah, I've got wobbles on my tummy and I've got scars on my tummy that show that my tummy's stretched to fit you in. And isn't my tummy amazing at digesting my food? And it works really well. And I'm so lucky because some people, their tummies don't work as well. And I'm really lucky that my tummy works well. And so just really being conscious of talking positively about bodies and being mindful about talking about other people as well. Like we don't compliment weight loss in our house because you never know what's going on for the person who's lost weight. Like have they been sick? Have they been through a period of real stress? So we're really conscious we don't talk about bodies in our house.
That's a great one.
Kids don't have a lot of filters. I find they just say, so when you talk about, you know, how we talk about a body, I feel like at some point every parent has had a kid go, that person's fat, mum, or, you know, like point stuff out. And sometimes I think we just quickly shut down a conversation and we're like, oh. But how should we then maybe have a better way of talking that through rather than shutting it down?
I think it's really important that children have an awareness of the fact that we live in a world with diet culture and that they can see it and are aware of it going into life. So we'll talk about the idea, and it's something that we've started from a really, really young age, saying that kind of, what do you think? Some people, like, bodies come in all shapes and sizes. There's, even if we all ate the same, there'd still be thin people and fat people and short people and tall people and everything in between. So it's natural for bodies to come in different shapes and sizes. And fat's not necessarily a bad word. It's just a descriptive word. So letting children know that, but then also saying that we know that some people use fat as a bad word. And why do you think they do that? And what's going on behind that so that children understand that?
How do you feel about us complimenting our children on their appearance?
I think it's okay if we're also complimenting other stuff. It's really important that we don't make the appearance, like what we look like is just part of who we are. Our bodies are a vessel that get us through life, and there's so much that makes us who we are that are not what we look like. But in the world that we live in, bodies are judged by what they look like, and that's not right. So talking to children about kind of the other things that make them who they are. My daughter, when she was younger, I had one girl who had super curly hair and she was really cute, and everybody used to say, oh, she's so beautiful. And she used to turn around and say, well, I'm smart as well and funny. Kind of, yeah, she had the sass going on.
Yeah.
But it led her to have that sense of who she is outside of what she looks like.
Yeah. I am quite aware, like my daughter, she was like on the bike going up the hill. I'm like, look at those strong legs.
Yeah.
And but it is a real change, because I think I grew up with my dad always going, oh, you're so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it was very appearance heavy and meant no harm, but that was all I sort of got. So it's cool now then seeing my dad kind of compliment in a different way, you know, with my kids. It was lovely.
Now, talking about teens, they've got so many hormones raging away, and they're trying to figure out their place in the world and what makes them unique. And there's even sort of a bit more thrown in with the social media and so much more marketing that's targeted at them. You know, as parents, what should we be looking out for to make sure that they're staying safe with their relationship with food and their relationship with their own body?
I would be conscious of if you're noticing a lot of negative talk coming up, if there's a shift in that, if there's a shift away from wanting to have family meals and they're wanting to eat in secret, the lunchbox is coming back not eaten, or they're kind of, another thing can be isolating from their friends and not spending as much time at friends. So just being mindful of that and aware. In case there's something going on in terms of restrictive eating, or we know it's very common and it's becoming more common with our teenagers, and not just girls. I think we have this idea that it's just girls, but actually we're seeing eating disorders on the rise in boys as well. And also, I think the idea of what an eating disorder looks like. I think when we think of an eating disorder, we automatically think anorexia. But actually, binge eating is 3 times more common than anorexia. And we can have anorexia in people who are bigger. It's not necessarily someone who's super slim. So it's just been aware of that these kind of preconceptions we have about eating disorders.
So if someone's listening and their teen is sort of isolating themselves a little bit more, maybe they are noticing things like the lunchbox, where would you start in that conversation with your teen as a parent or caregiver? How should they be approaching that?
The first thing I would be doing is looking at having a chat with the GP and seeing what's going on in terms of weight. Has there been any weight loss, or and seeing where it feels comfortable to have those conversations with your teens. I remember my mum always saying that a really good place for conversations is in the car. That kind of, and approaching it in a way that kind of, I'm concerned about you, this is what I've noticed, and opening it up. What's going on for you? Like, is there anything you'd like to talk about? Kind of, so it's not just putting them on the spot, it's allowing them the opportunity to bring stuff up if it feels comfortable for them to do so.
If parents would like to find out more information, where would you suggest after they've talked to the GP, maybe they've had those conversations with their child, with their teen, where else could they be going to get some more help and some ideas?
There's a really good website. I think it's called eDance. I'll send you the link to put in the show notes.
Perfect.
Yeah, but it's the Eating Disorder Association website, and it's even got like a quick kind of quiz that you can go through to see if you can see whether you're concerned about your child. And oftentimes the GP, if there is a concern, they'll refer you into the eating disorders unit, or if you could see an eating disorders professional privately either if you wanted to.
I feel like we've covered so much today, so many areas from the solids to the teens and everywhere in between. If people want to find out more about your work or maybe have some time with you, where should they go? And last thoughts, anything you'd like to leave our listeners with around body image and eating and our children and eating our children? It's all coming out weird now, isn't it?
Anything you wanted to say, but you haven't said.
Yeah. There we go, Jenny.
I think if people want to find me, my website's thefoodtree.co.co, not .com. And the same on Instagram. I do my own social media and website, so it's not as up to date as I'd like. But yeah, and I've got a range of different offerings, so it's not just having to pay for a one-on-one consultation. There's options to do online courses or join webinars or things like that. And as for what to leave parents with, that's a big one. I suppose it's looking at the idea that all foods can have a place in a healthy diet and bodies come in all shapes and sizes. And I think one of the biggest things is that for parents is there's so much information on what to feed children, but not how. And I actually feel like how is probably even more important than the what. Yes, the what is important, but that will come if we can get the how right. So learning how to feed children and how to do it in a way that protects their relationship with food and their bodies and their relationship with us as well, because we don't want mealtimes to be such a battlefield.
Yeah. So good. I think just like in parenting, we have these conversations with our kids and it's not a one-off and then we're done. It's a constant. And I think this conversation we've had here today, we've covered so much, but there'll be more conversations we're going to have. And I reckon we could do a whole podcast just with your questions to get them in, and we could get you back and kind of carry on this chat and do some more collaborations would be wonderful. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited for this stuff, even for my own whānau, of taking this information and how it could just make things a little less stress and more about connection and fun and not as pressured. So yeah, thank you so much. If you'd like to find out more about our work at Parenting Place, parentingplace.nz is where you'll find us, and I will put all the different things, websites and stuff we mentioned in our show notes so you can find those as well. We'll see you next time.